You are not tired because life is hard. You are tired because you've been living a lie that keeps getting exposed, and you keep pretending you don't see it. You still believe that if you are loyal, people will be loyal back. You still believe that if you give enough, care enough, sacrifice enough, eventually someone will choose you. You still believe effort guarantees outcome. It doesn't. And deep down, you already know that. You've seen it. You felt it. The moment they replaced you like you were nothing. The moment your loyalty was treated like a convenience. The moment you realized you were the only one playing by rules no one else agreed to. But instead of facing that truth, you explained it away. You called it bad timing. You called it wrong person. You called it, I just need to try harder. No, you needed to see clearer. 500 years ago, a man who had been tortured, broken, stripped of power, and thrown into exile sat alone in a small room and wrote something most people are too weak to face. Not motivation, not hope, not comfort. A blueprint. A blueprint of how human beings actually operate when there is something to gain. A blueprint of why good people get used and why naive people get destroyed. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and what he understood is this: life does not reward goodness, it rewards accuracy. Accuracy in how you see people. Accuracy in how you read intentions. Accuracy in how quickly you accept uncomfortable reality without trying to soften it. Because the truth is, you were not betrayed because you were unlucky. You were betrayed because you miscalculated. You saw loyalty where there was only convenience. You saw love where there was only temporary alignment. You saw permanence in something that was designed to disappear. And here is the part most people will never accept. Nothing went wrong. It worked exactly the way it was supposed to. But be warned, once you see this, you cannot go back to who you were before. You cannot return to blind trust. You cannot return to emotional comfort built on illusions. This is not self-help. This is surgery. And by the end of this, you will either understand the game or realize you've been the one being played your entire life. Let's begin the surgery. Law 1. The illusion of goodness. You were taught that being a good person is an advantage. That if you are honest, loyal, patient, the world will recognize it, reward it, protect it. That is the first lie that made you weak, because in reality, goodness, by itself, has no value in a system driven by self-interest. Think about it. When was the last time someone chose you purely because you were good, not useful, not convenient, not aligned with what they needed in that moment? Exactly. You confuse moral value with strategic value, and the world only responds to one of them. Machiavelli never said people are evil to insult them. He said it to strip away your illusions. Human beings do not act based on what is right. They act based on what benefits them, especially when pressure is applied, and pressure is always applied eventually. This is why the good person keeps getting blindsided, not because they are unlucky, but because they are operating with the wrong map. You expect consistency in a system built on shifting incentives. You expect loyalty in people whose priorities change the moment conditions change. You expect fairness in a world that rewards outcomes, not intentions. And every time reality contradicts your belief, you don't update the belief. You double down on it. You give more. You tolerate more. You explain more. Until one day, you realize you've been slowly negotiating against yourself. Here is the shift. Stop asking, am I being a good person? Start asking, what is actually happening here? Who benefits? What changes if the pressure increases? What happens if you are no longer useful? Because once you see through this illusion, something uncomfortable happens. You stop feeling special for being good, and you start seeing how easily goodness gets exploited when it is not backed by awareness. This is where most people hesitate, because if you let go of this illusion, You lose the identity that made you feel safe. But if you don't, you will keep replaying the same betrayal with different faces. And if you think that realization is harsh, then you are not ready for what comes next. Law 2. The gravity of self-interest. You keep treating betrayal like an exception, like something rare, like something that only happens when you meet the wrong person. That's why it keeps happening to you, because you still don't understand the force that's actually running the system. Self-interest is not a personality flaw. It's not a character defect. It's not something bad people have and good people don't. It is the default setting of every human being you will ever meet, including you. Machiavelli didn't say people act selfishly to be dramatic. He said it because he observed something most people refuse to accept. Under enough pressure, everyone recalculates. The loyal friend becomes distant when staying loyal costs too much. The loving partner changes when a better option appears. The principled person bends when the consequences become real, not because they are monsters, because they are human. And you keep getting shocked by gravity. You keep walking off emotional cliffs and acting surprised when you hit the ground. Here's the part that will bother you. You don't actually know who people are. You only know who they are under the current conditions. Change the conditions, and you reveal the truth. Add pressure, remove benefits, introduce risk. Watch what shifts. This is why words are meaningless without context, because anyone can afford to sound loyal. When loyalty is easy, anyone can promise forever, when nothing is being tested. But the moment something is at stake, the mask starts to crack. And that's where you finally see the real person. So the question is not, can I trust them? The real question is, what would they do if the situation changed? What would they do if you lost your status? If you stopped being useful? If choosing you required sacrifice? Because that version of them is the version you will eventually meet. And if you're not prepared for that, you will keep building your life on people who were never built to hold your weight. This is where your strategy has to change. You don't stop trusting. You stop trusting blindly. You observe patterns. You create small tests. You pay attention to actions under pressure, not words in comfort. Because once you understand this, you stop taking betrayal personally, and you start seeing it as something predictable. And if you think predictability makes this easier, wait until you realize what it does to your relationships. Law 3. The architecture of trust. You say you trust someone, but what you really mean is, you feel comfortable around them. And that's the problem, because comfort is not evidence. Comfort is not proof. Comfort is often the exact environment where deception survives the longest. You were taught that trust is something you feel, a vibe, a connection, an emotional certainty. But Machiavelli would look at that and call it blindness. Trust is not a feeling. It is a structure. And like any structure, it is built on conditions. Conditions that can change. Conditions that can break. Conditions that, if you ignore them, will collapse on you without warning. History makes this painfully clear. For decades, the Medici family ruled Florence. They funded art, controlled wealth, shaped culture. They were respected, admired, even loved, until the moment pressure entered the system. A foreign army approached. Risk increased. Fear spread. And overnight, everything changed. The same people who praised them turned. The same city that depended on them abandoned them. Loyalty didn't slowly fade. It disappeared because it was never unconditional. It was situational. And that's what you refuse to see in your own life. You think people are loyal to you, but most of them are loyal to what you represent. Your stability, your value, your presence in their current reality. Remove or weaken those, and watch how quickly the structure shifts. This is why blind trust is so dangerous. Not because people are secretly plotting against you, but because you are building emotional certainty on conditions You never took the time to understand. Here is the shift. Stop asking, do I trust them? Start asking, what is this trust built on? What are they gaining from this relationship? What are they risking? What would make them leave? Because real trust is not blind. It is calculated, observed, tested over time under changing conditions. And when you build it that way, something changes inside you. You stop being surprised. You stop being naive. And for the first time, you start seeing relationships as they are, not as you wish they would be. And if you think that clarity gives you control, the next part will force you to confront something far worse: how little control you actually have. Law 4. The war of virtù and fortuna. This is where your illusion of control dies. You've been told your whole life that you are in control, that if you plan carefully, work hard enough, stay disciplined, you can shape your future exactly the way you want. That belief is comforting. It's also incomplete. Machiavelli split reality into two forces: virtù and fortuna. Virtù is everything you think you control: your skill, your discipline, your ability to think, adapt, act, and impose your will on reality. Fortuna is everything you don't: random events, timing, accidents, opportunities that arrive too early or too late, people entering your life at the wrong moment or leaving at the worst possible one. And here's the part most people can't accept: fortuna controls half the game. Half. That means no matter how precise you are, no matter how disciplined, no matter how prepared, there is always a force moving against you that you cannot predict and cannot stop. This is why people break, because they build their identity on control, and when life proves them wrong, they collapse. But Machiavelli didn't say this to make you feel powerless. He said it to force you to focus on the only part that matters: your virtue. Because while you cannot control the storm, you can control what happens when it hits you. Most people waste their virtue. They spend their energy arguing with things they can't change, complaining about timing, obsessing over people who already left, fighting battles that produce nothing. So, when fortuna strikes, they have nothing left. No structure, no resilience, no reserve. They stand there, exposed, hoping reality will be kind. It never is. Here is the shift. Stop trying to control outcomes. Start building capacity. Capacity to adapt. Capacity to recover. Capacity to move fast when an opening appears. And to survive when everything collapses. Because fortuna doesn't ask for your permission. It doesn't care about your plans. It only reveals whether you were ready. And if you think being ready is about motivation or mindset, the next part will show you how most people quietly destroy their own potential long before life ever tests them. Law 5. The waste of potential. You think your problem is lack of opportunity. It's not. Your problem is that your energy is scattered across things that don't matter, and you don't even realize how much it's costing you. Look at your life honestly. How much time do you spend thinking about people who are no longer relevant? How much energy goes into conversations that change nothing? How many hours disappear into distractions that leave you exactly where you started? You don't have a lack of potential. You have a leakage of focus. And the worst part is, it feels normal, because everyone around you is doing the same thing. Wasting attention, wasting time, wasting the only resource that could actually make you dangerous. Machiavelli understood something most people ignore. Power is not built in moments of intensity. It is built in sustained direction. But you keep resetting your direction. Every emotional trigger pulls you away. Every distraction fractures your attention. Every temporary feeling becomes a command you obey. So instead of building something, you stay in motion without progress. And when fortuna finally hits, when the crisis comes, when the opportunity appears, when the moment actually matters, you are not ready. Not because you're incapable, but because you spent your capacity on things that had no return. This is the quiet tragedy most people never see. They don't fail dramatically. They dissolve slowly. A little less focus each day. A little more distraction each week. Until one day, they realize nothing meaningful was built. Here is the shift. Start cutting. Cut the conversations that lead nowhere. Cut the habits that drain you. Cut the attachments that no longer serve a purpose. Not emotionally, strategically. Because every yes you give to something irrelevant is a no to something that could actually change your life. And once you begin to reclaim that energy, you'll notice something uncomfortable. Most of what filled your life was never necessary. And if that realization feels isolating, the next part will show you why the world doesn't reward who you are. It rewards what you project. Law 6, the mask and the signal. You believe people see you for who you are. They don't. They see what you project. And then they decide who you are based on that. That's it. Machiavelli said it clearly. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. And those few don't matter as much as you think. Because the world doesn't operate on your internal truth. It operates on perception. This is why you keep feeling misunderstood. You think if you just explain yourself better, if people just saw your intentions, if they just understood your heart, everything would change. It won't, because perception is not built through explanation. It's built through consistent signals. Your posture, your tone, your boundaries, your reactions under pressure. These are the things people read, not your intentions, not your hidden depth, not the story you tell yourself about who you are. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Sometimes the signal matters more than the substance. Not because substance is irrelevant, but because no one will ever discover your substance if your signal tells them to ignore you. This is why people with less ability, less intelligence, less depth, still dominate rooms. Because they understand something you resist. Visibility beats invisibility. Certainty beats hesitation. Projection beats explanation. And you keep trying to be understood, instead of becoming undeniable. You talk too much when you should be observing. You explain too much when you should be demonstrating. You justify yourself to people who already made their decision about you. That's not humility. That's leakage of power. Here is the shift. Stop explaining your value. Start embodying it. Speak less, but mean more. Move slower, but with intention. React less, but with precision. Let your actions create a pattern that doesn't need interpretation, because when your signal becomes consistent enough, something changes. People stop questioning you. They stop testing you. They start adjusting to you, not because you demanded it, but because your presence made it unavoidable. And if you think mastering perception gives you control, the next part will show you the cost of abusing it, because not every strategy that works is worth becoming. Law 7. The cost of deception. At this point, you're starting to understand the game. You see the patterns. You see the incentives. You see how perception shapes reality. And now a dangerous thought enters your mind. If this is how the world works, why not just manipulate it? Why not say what people want to hear? Why not create a persona that gets results? Why not use deception as a tool? And you're right, it works. People have climbed to the top using charm, lies, calculated cruelty. They've built empires on illusion. They've controlled others by controlling perception. Machiavelli didn't deny this, but he exposed something most people don't see until it's too late. The cost. Because deception is not a one-time action. It's a system you have to maintain. Every lie creates a dependency. Every manipulation creates a thread you must keep holding. Every false image becomes something you have to defend constantly. And over time, that cost compounds. You start watching everything you say. You start calculating every move. You start questioning who knows what and who might expose you. You don't relax. You manage. You don't trust. You monitor. You don't live. You maintain a structure that can collapse at any moment. This is why many who win through deception never feel safe. Because deep down, they know their position is not stable. It's artificial. And anything artificial requires energy to sustain. Now compare that to something else. Real capability. Skill that cannot be faked. Discipline that shows in your actions. Presence that doesn't need exaggeration. That kind of power is quiet, but it's stable. It doesn't need constant defense. It doesn't rely on people believing something that isn't true. It simply holds. Here is the shift. Don't aim to become someone who can manipulate the game. Become someone who doesn't need to. Use awareness to see through deception, not to build your life on it. Because the moment your entire position depends on illusion, you are no longer in control. You are trapped inside the very system you thought you mastered. And if you think that trap is the worst outcome, the next part will show you something even more inevitable. The cycle that destroys everything, including people who think they've already won. Law 8. The cycle of decay. You think success is the finish line. It's not. It's the beginning of your next failure. If you don't understand what comes after it, Machiavelli observed something that most people never notice until it's too late. Every system follows a pattern. Strength creates order. Order creates stability. Stability creates comfort. And comfort slowly creates weakness. Not instantly, quietly. At first, nothing looks wrong. You're doing well. Things feel easier. You've earned some control, some peace, some breathing room. So you relax. You stop pushing as hard. You stop questioning as much. You stop sharpening the very edges that got you there. And that's when the shift begins. Discipline fade. Standards drop. Focus softens. Not enough to alarm you, just enough to start the decay. This is how people lose everything without noticing, not through one catastrophic mistake, but through slow erosion, a little less effort here, a little more comfort there, until the version of you that built everything no longer exists. And when pressure returns, because it always does, you're not the same person anymore. You don't respond the same way. You don't adapt as fast. You don't fight as hard. And suddenly, things start collapsing. Not because the world changed, because you did. This is the part no one tells you. Your success contains the seed of your downfall. The moment you feel secure, you are already at risk. Here is the shift. Stop chasing comfort as a reward. Start treating it as a warning, a signal that you might be drifting, a sign that you need to reintroduce pressure intentionally. Train when you don't have to. Think when things feel easy. Challenge yourself when no one is forcing you to. Because if you don't create your own friction, life will do it for you. And when it does, it won't be controlled. It will be violent. And if you think you can wait until that moment to prepare, the next part will show you why most people never get that chance. Because by the time pressure arrives, it's already too late to become who you needed to be. Law 9. Necessity creates monsters. You say you want to become stronger, more disciplined, more focused, more dangerous in how you move through life. But you're waiting for motivation. You're waiting for the right moment, the right mindset, the right circumstances. That moment doesn't exist. Because the version of you that you're trying to become is not built in comfort. It is forced into existence by necessity. Machiavelli understood this at a level most people avoid. A man reveals nothing about himself when he has options, when he can delay, when he can avoid, when he can choose the easier path. But remove those options, and everything changes. When there is no backup plan, no safety net, no way out except forward. You don't try harder. You transform. Not because you wanted to, because you had to. This is why most people never reach their potential. Not because they lack talent, but because they never enter conditions that demand everything from them. They always leave a door open, a way to quit, a way to retreat, a way to stay the same, while pretending to grow. And as long as that door exists, they will use it. This is the uncomfortable truth. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your level of necessity. If nothing in your life is forcing you to evolve, you won't. You'll think about it, talk about it, plan it, but you won't become it. Here is the shift. Stop waiting for pressure. Create it. Put yourself in environments where average is not enough. Take on responsibilities that scare you. Commit to paths where backing out has a cost. Because when retreat becomes painful, growth becomes automatic. And this is where something deeper happens. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, "Do I feel like it today?" Because it's no longer optional. It's required. That's when discipline stops being an effort and becomes your default. But there's one final truth most people avoid until the very end. Even when you understand all of this, even when you see the patterns clearly, even when you know exactly what to do, most people still won't act. And that is where everything is decided. Law 10. The contempt for the passive. This is where everything splits. Not between the strong and the weak, not between the smart and the ignorant, but between those who act and those who don't. You like to think failure comes from making the wrong move. It doesn't. Failure, in most cases, comes from standing still, waiting, hesitating, overthinking until the moment passes, and calling it being careful. Machiavelli had no respect for that kind of man. Not the one who makes mistakes, not the one who takes risks and loses, but the one who watches life unfold and does nothing. Because inaction is not neutral. It is a decision to stay where you are, a decision to let other people shape outcomes for you, a decision to slowly become irrelevant without ever feeling the shock of failure. At least the person who acts learns. They adjust. They collect data. They refine their strategy. Even when they're wrong, they move. But you wait for certainty. You wait until you feel ready. You wait until the fear disappears. You wait until you have guarantees. And while you're waiting, opportunities close. People move on. Doors that were once open disappear without warning. Not because you weren't capable, because you weren't there. This is the brutal truth. The world does not punish you for being wrong. It punishes you for being absent, for not stepping forward, for not taking the shot, for not entering the arena when it mattered. Because the cost of inaction compounds silently. Days turn into months, months into years. And one day, you look back and realize nothing changed. Not because you couldn't change it, because you never moved. Here is the shift. Stop waiting for clarity. Move. And create clarity through action. Make the decision. Take the step. Adjust when reality responds. Because action generates feedback. Feedback creates intelligence. And intelligence is what actually moves you forward. But hesitation creates nothing. And that is why, in the end, the passive don't just lose the game. They never even entered it. And now you have a choice. And now you see it. Not the version of life you were sold. Not the comfortable story where things work out if you're patient enough. You see the structure. A world that does not care about your intentions. People who respond to incentives, not promises. A system where perception shapes reality and comfort slowly erodes strength. And somewhere in all of this, you recognize yourself. The times you gave too much, trusted too quickly, waited too long, the moments you felt something was off, but chose to ignore it, because the truth was inconvenient. That version of you is still there. And this is the final choice. You can go back to comfort, back to believing what feels good instead of what is true, back to explaining away every betrayal, every failure, every missed opportunity. Most people will. They will hear this, feel the discomfort, and return to the same patterns tomorrow. Because awareness is heavy, and staying the same is easy. Or you can accept what you've seen. You can start cutting illusions. Start observing instead of assuming. Start acting instead of waiting. You can become someone who doesn't need the world to be fair, because you understand how it actually works. But understand this: if you choose that path, you will feel different, more aware, more controlled, more precise, but also more alone. Because most people don't want clarity. They want comfort. And the moment you stop playing by the same illusions, you stop belonging to the same crowd. That's the price. So the question is simple. Do you want to feel safe? Or do you want to see clearly? If this opened your eyes, don't just move on like it meant nothing. Type this in the comments. I see the game. Make it real. Subscribe if you haven't. Because most people won't go this far. Most people won't change. Most people will go back to sleep. But if you're still here, you already know you're not like them. And I'll see you in the dark.